I transmigrated into a wealthy extra in a true and false heiress novel with a mission to redeem the future villainess, the fake heiress, who would commit most crimes in the penal code and ensure her happiness. To prevent her from turning dark, I took her in and raised her with the principles of abiding by the law and prioritizing humanity, molding her into a kind and innocent soul. Under my guidance, she grew up righteous and virtuous, transforming from a doomed antagonist into the male lead-s white moonlight. Her hobbies range from helping elderly cross the street to donating to disaster areas, effortlessly winning over the male lead Brian. Just when I thought she would marry the male lead and achieve happiness, the true heiress confessed her love to me, and then the fake heiress snapped. Brother, if you choose someone else, I'll have no choice but to lock you away where no one could see you. Only later did I realize she'd been dark from the start. The innocent white flower act was just a performance for my benefit. One brother, I keep dreaming about Brian. Lately, Caroline pouted, complaining to me with a hint of grievance. Brian was the male lead of this novel, and Caroline was the villainous fake heiress. Hearing Caroline's words, I knew the plot was about to begin. I transmigrated into a wealthy side character in a novel about a real and fake heiress with a mission to prevent the villainous fake heiress from turning dark and ensure her happiness reaches full points. In the original story's ending, Caroline couldn't win Brian's love, and everything ended in a devastating fire. Now, the plot has just begun, and due to the male lead-s protagonist aura, Caroline has already started dreaming about Brian. It seems the power of the storyline truly cannot be underestimated. After all your classmates, and he-s a handsome male classmate, it's normal to dream about him. I ruffled her hair and placed breakfast on the table. Time for breakfast, Caroline. Brother, you are much better looking than him. If I were to dream about anyone, it should be you. She stuck out her tongue and made a playful face at me, looking pure and adorable, completely different from the gloomy extreme antagonist she was portrayed as in the book. This marks my 10th year in this world, and the 10th year since I took Caroline home to raise her as my sister. So far, it seems my mission is going well. Now she has happily and steadily entered university with a happiness level of 60 once she graduates smoothly and wins over the male lead, pushing her happiness to 100. I can finally return to my original world. After dinner, I accompanied her to school in this world. I'm only a year older than Caroline. To take better care of her, I delayed my own enrollment and have always stayed in the same class as her. The first semester of freshman year has just begun, and the plotline is officially unfolding. The male lead, Brian, and the two key characters of the true and false heiresses have finally met. As expected, after class, Elizabeth came over and took Caroline's hand. Caroline, you're the child who was switched at birth in the Addams family back then, right? Caroline gave her a suspicious look, then nodded. It was you and me who got switched back then. I'm Elizabeth. After we returned to our real families, we used to meet and play together often. Do you remember? Hearing Elizabeth's words, Caroline's lips curled slightly into a sweet smile. Of course. I remember. You're only 1 day older than me, and you said you'd be my big sister. Elizabeth hugged her excitedly. It's just a shame that when I went to the Addams house to look for you later, you weren't there anymore. I heard you were sent to an orphanage by Mrs. Addams. I don't know how you've been all these years. Both the Addams and Elizabeth's family were prominent clans in Cloud City, but Caroline was the Addams' illegitimate daughter, who couldn't be acknowledged publicly, while Elizabeth was the true heiress of her family, cherished like the moon among stars. Their statuses had been worlds apart since birth, especially since Caroline had only been back at the Addams house for a few days before being discovered by the then Mrs. Addams, who promptly sent her to an orphanage. In the original story, even though the Addams family later took Caroline back and gave her a life of wealth and luxury, her time at the orphanage remained a lifelong nightmare for her. Fortunately, I transmigrated just in time. On the very day she was sent to the orphanage, I took her back. Caroline smiled at Elizabeth, then looked up at me, her eyes shining. On my first day at the orphanage, my brother brought me home. I've been living very well all these years. Elizabeth followed her gaze to me, a strange expression flickering across her face, though it vanished in an instant as she smiled and said, I consider Caroline my sister. By helping her, you've helped our Elizabeth family. If you ever need anything from me in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Elizabeth was exactly the kind of kind-hearted, innocent female lead character who cared for everyone. But if she had truly cared about Caroline back, then how could the original Caroline have spent her entire childhood in an orphanage? Money can solve 99% of problems, and the remaining 1% is likely due to not having enough to ensure the smooth completion of my mission. The system provided me with ample funds. I really didn't need the Elizabeth family's help with anything. Smiling, I shook my head without responding to Elizabeth's offer. Unexpectedly, when school ended in the evening, Elizabeth showed up with her mother to invite both Caroline and me to their home for a visit. Caroline wasn't the type to refuse others easily, so she immediately looked to me for approval. I nodded at her, and together we got into the car, heading to Elizabeth's house. In the original story, this plot also existed. Caroline stayed at the Elizabeth household for 8 years, but after turning 8, she never experienced familial warmth again. Yet when she returned to the Elizabeth household a decade later at 18, she was merely an insignificant outsider. She could only watch helplessly as her former parents doted on their true heiress, joking with her, while treating Caroline with polite detachment as if she were just a guest. This visit to the Elizabeth household marked Caroline's first descent into darkness in the original story. She began to envy, resent, and even somewhat hate Elizabeth, believing she had stolen her parents away. But in this lifetime, I didn't let Caroline grow up lonely in an orphanage. Now she lacks no love and has instead become a kind, confident young woman with strong self-respect. Elizabeth's mother had ordered many dishes from five-star hotel, but Elizabeth complained, "Mom, didn't you promise to cook yourself today?" Elizabeth's mother explained, "Caroline is coming over today, and I was afraid she might not be used to my cooking. You only cook once a week since I didn't get to eat your cooking today. Can you make me some shepherdess purse tomorrow?" Elizabeth asked next. Elizabeth's mother coaxingly nodded. All right, I'll definitely make it for you tomorrow." Elizabeth happily flashed a victory sign, then turned to Caroline. "Caroline, you have no idea. I think my mom's cooking is even better than five-star chefs, but she doesn't believe it herself. I guess that's what love tastes like." In the original story, Caroline would have been deeply stung watching their mother-daughter interaction. That maternal love once belonged to her, but now she couldn't even taste a meal made by those hands anymore. But the current Caroline was clearly different from the book version. She squinted at me with a smile. "My brother also thinks his cooking is terrible, but I absolutely love it." "James, you can actually cook that. Amazing. Caroline is so lucky to have a brother like you," Elizabeth exclaimed in surprise. Caroline nodded with a blissful expression. "Yes, ever since I was little, it's always been my brother who cooks for me. His dishes are the absolute best. In my previous life, I was a low-level office worker. Good takeout wasn't cost-effective, and the cheap options raised food safety concerns, so I always ended up cooking for myself. After transmigrating here, I tried hiring housekeepers for Caroline a few times, but she never liked them in the end. I just took over all the cooking myself. But honestly, I think what I make is barely edible, certainly not gourmet cuisine, yet Caroline genuinely seems to love it. She never leaves a single bite whenever I cook." James, the first love to taste your cooking sometime. Next time I visit your place, don't forget to make me something delicious, Elizabeth teased. "That one do," Caroline frowned. "Only I get to eat my brother's cooking." Elizabeth's mother quickly intervened to ease the awkwardness, praising me. Later, Patriarch Adam said Caroline was sent away out of respect for the Adam family. "Madam, we couldn't show Caroline too much care. We hadn't heard anything about her all these years. It's all thanks to you, James." On the way home, Caroline linked arms with me and sighed, "Brother, when I was little, I often wondered why I didn't have parents who loved me. But now I feel having you is enough. No one else matters." Her eyes sparkled with a light I couldn't decipher. As she looked up at me in that moment, it suddenly felt real. She wasn't just a two-dimensional character I needed to save for a mission, but a little girl I had redeemed. 3. The plot of this book was outdated and cliched. Even though Brian and Caroline were engaged later on, he clearly preferred the kind-hearted Elizabeth. To help Caroline successfully win over the male lead in the future, I had taught her since childhood to be a good person. Now, she wasn't afraid to help elderly people hit by cars, donated all her pocket money to children in mountainous areas, and was always eager to assist her classmates, radiating warmth like a little sun. Yes, the current Caroline was even kinder than the female lead. Aside from studying, her mind was entirely occupied with charity work, as if she had installed a lei feng system. Note: lei feng is a Chinese cultural icon, symbolizing selflessness and altruism. By the second semester of her freshman year, Caroline had become a class favorite due to her striking looks and easygoing personality. In the original story, this position was meant for the female lead, Elizabeth. Caroline, who is introverted yet beautiful, even suffered several instances of bullying, proof that personality truly shapes destiny. The mission was progressing smoothly. Even Brian, the male lead, began asking me about Caroline's opinion of him, urging me to put in a good word for him in front of her. "Caroline, what do you think of Brian?" On the weekend when I took Caroline for a walk in the park, I casually asked. "Not kind enough. Last time, an old lady fell, and he didn't help her up." My lips twitched as I was momentarily speechless. After a long pause, I continued, "What if he likes you? What would you think?" With my eyes open, closing them makes it easier to fall. Caroline snorted coldly. "Brother, didn't you say we should focus on studying during school?" "But Brian is different. He asked the male lead, our target to conquer." Just as I was racking my brains, trying to explain Brian's uniqueness and sing his praises, Caroline interrupted me. "Brother, I don't like him right now. I just want to focus on my studies. And besides you, everyone else in the world is the same to me." Why is this plot different from the original book? Caroline in the book was madly in love with him. Aside, it seems I'll have to find another way to convince Caroline about Brian later. Brian genuinely liked Caroline, always following her around and giving her gifts every day. I told Brian that Caroline thought he wasn't kind enough because he didn't help an old man who fell. So that very day, he went and helped 100 elderly people only to get scammed out of 88,000. After the male lead went crazy, the female lead started acting crazy too. Elizabeth has been clinging to me lately, almost insisting on joining us for meals every day. Wasn't she's supposed to like Brian in the original story. It's as if Brian suddenly lost his male lead aura. So one day when Caroline wasn't around, I finally couldn't hold back and asked Elizabeth, you stick to me every day, could it be you fallen for me? I never expected her to nod with complete seriousness. Yes, I have. As she spoke, she directly grabbed my hand. How about we get together? Just then I caught sight of Caroline approaching out of the corner of my eye. I quickly pulled my hand away and took 2 steps back. Brother Elizabeth, what were you two doing behind my back just now? Caroline asked as she walked over. Nothing, let us go eat, I hurriedly explained, but Elizabeth gave me a suggestive look and raised an eyebrow. I thought it was just Elizabeth acting on impulse this time. After all, the female lead should be drawn to the male lead, not a nobody like me. But to my surprise, she seemed dead set on being with me and confessed her feelings several more times. We're still students right now. I just want to focus on my studies. Besides, why? What do you even like about me? I rejected her once again. Because you're a nobody who isn't bound by the plot. Elizabeth shrugged and simply laid her cards on the table. Stop pretending in this world apart from you and me, everyone else is an NPC, including the male lead Brian. They don't have thoughts of their own, she sighed. I only want to be with someone who can think. I never expected Elizabeth, the female lead, to have awakened. I opened my mouth, but couldn't find the right words to say. This isn't a good sign. An awakened person could become an uncontrollable variable, potentially causing my mission to fail. Seeing my silence, she stared at me and continued, I awakened when I was very young. Everyone just follows the script and acts out their parts. The funny thing is they don't believe in the fate written by the author. They think it's the life they've chosen for themselves until I met you. Her gaze grew increasingly fervent as she looked at me. You're a character from outside the novel, and you've changed the villain. Caroline, you're the only self-aware person in this world besides me. So wouldn't it be perfect if we were together? I shook my head in disagreement. They simply don't know this is a novel. But that doesn't mean they lack consciousness. Just like Caroline, she's changed. Because of me, she's no longer the Caroline from the book. Because she's a living person who can be shaped into different personalities by different experiences. Let me guess your purpose for coming to this world. With a slight curl of her lips, her eyes brimmed with certainty. To save Caroline, right? Then let me destroy her. I never expected the heroine Elizabeth to completely break character after awakening, resorting to such vicious words just to threaten me. For Elizabeth truly meant what she said just the day before we were still good friends, but simply because I rejected her confession, she began her revenge the very next day. She somehow photoshopped Caroline's pictures and spread rumors that Caroline attended the elite school through sponsorship from an older man, and that our relationship wasn't pure either. Overnight, the rumors spread like wildfire, making Caroline the subject of gossip. But Caroline was well prepared. She directly produced her donation records and bank statements, proving that all her money came from the allowance I gave her and that any extra funds weren't spent on luxury items, but were entirely donated. Rumors fell apart on their own, since no gold digger would sell her body to donate to children in impoverished mountain regions. Yet when it came to the rumors about her and me, she just smiled and told others if I could be with my brother, that would be even better. After all, we're not related by blood. My scalp tingled with dread. Everything was spiraling out of control. Although Elizabeth knew the entire plot of the novel, her methods weren't particularly impressive. She actually threw cockroaches into Caroline's desk like a grade schooler. Caroline expressionlessly crushed the cockroach with a tissue, but when she saw me approaching, she suddenly screamed, "Brother, it's so scary, come comfort me quick." On Friday, when Caroline was on duty, I went back to school to look for her after she didn't return home for dinner, only to find Elizabeth had locked her in the classroom. "Brother, that woman Elizabeth likes you. She's bullying me just to get close to you." Caroline spoke with a somewhat aggrieved tone. "I'll try to persuade her again." I sighed. Elizabeth is really acting a bit crazy right now, probably because she's known since childhood that this is a Truman Show-like world which has driven her to the brink. But that doesn't excuse her madness. I can't understand why the originally kind-hearted female lead has become like this, though. All I want is to protect Caroline and ensure the mission proceeds smoothly. She keeps saying things about female leads and supporting characters in front of me. Brother, do you know what she is talking about? Caroline narrowed her eyes at me, her gaze carrying a hint of scrutiny. For a moment, I suddenly felt that perhaps she already knew something, but I could only shake my head at her, indicating that I wasn't clear about it either. "So you don't understand what she is saying?" either Caroline sighed before adding, "But it doesn't matter. All of this should end now. What she wants is too extravagant. That greedy woman should have disappeared from our sight long ago." I didn't pay much attention to Caroline's words, thinking they were just spoken in anger. That weekend, I received a call from the police station. Caroline had actually been pushed off the library rooftop by Elizabeth. I rushed to the hospital, where Caroline lay pale in bed, smiling at me. Brother, it's done. That woman shouldn't appear in our lives again. The sunlight from the window fell on her profile. Her amber eyes and long lashes cast delicate shadows on her eyelids, making her look as beautiful as an angel at that moment. She had been telling me for days that she wanted to drive Elizabeth out of our lives, but I never expected her to resort to such extreme measures. Today's setup was clearly a trap she laid for Elizabeth, provoking her into pushing herself down the stairs. Otherwise, someone as timid as Elizabeth would never have gone this far. At that moment, I suddenly realized I might not have changed her at all. She remained the ruthless character from the novel who would harm even herself to achieve her goals. Looking at her frail state, I felt nothing but heartache and sorrow. Why go this far? There were other ways, I said with some bitterness. She actually dared to try and steal my brother from me. Of course, a greedy woman like that deserves to be sent to prison for proper rehabilitation. Only then will I feel at ease. Caroline gave me a sweet smile, then comforted me by saying, "It's okay, brother. It's just the 4th floor, a minor fracture. Can you promise not to hurt yourself like this again?" Looking at her lying on the hospital bed, I suddenly remembered the original novel's ending to completely possess Brian. She had jumped into a sea of flames with him in her arms. This was the girl I had raised with my own hands. I couldn't bear to see her treat herself this way. "Then you must promise me, brother, not to let other women get close to you, otherwise I'll go mad." She looked at me, her eyes filled with seriousness. My heart trembled, and I forced out a smile. "In the future, we'll both have people we love in our own separate families. But I only like you, brother. You are my home, brother. I want to marry you." Caroline stared straight into my eyes, as if afraid to miss any expression on my face. Just like when she used to ask me for toys as a child, this was the exact look she'd give me whenever she wanted something impossible to refuse. To say I hadn't noticed her feelings for me would be a lie, but I never expected her affection to be so bold and passionate. Unlike Elizabeth, Caroline hadn't awakened, yet her feelings for me actually managed to break through the plot, overcoming the instinct to fall for the male lead, shattering her destined fate. But none of this should be happening. I'm not her destined one. I'm just a wandering spirit occupying an NPC's identity, desperate to return home. This world doesn't belong to me. I shook my head at her. "Caroline, you're still young. You don't understand. What real love is, what you feel for me, is just dependency." She didn't rush to refute me. Instead, the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile, while her eyes gleamed with something cold and unsettling. "So brother doesn't like me in that way, I mean the kind of liking between a man and a woman." I hardened my heart and nodded at her. "Yes, I only see you as a sister." For some reason, as I said these words, I felt a pang of sadness in my heart. I was deeply sorrowful and afraid she might be hurt too. This was the girl I'd raised with my own hands, yet I wasn't worthy to keep her. All I could do was silently watch over her as she walked toward someone else. Her eyelids lowered, long lashes trembling slightly, but her gaze grew unfathomably dark. "Very well, in that case, after I'm discharged from the hospital, I'll return to the Adams family. Thank you for your care these 10 years, brother. I'll repay twice the expenses you've spent on me." Caroline was the long-lost heiress of the Adams family. Initially, because Mrs. Adams couldn't accept the betrayal, she was sent to an orphanage. But a few years ago, after Mrs. Adams passed away, the Adams family repeatedly sought us out, hoping Caroline would return. In the original story, Caroline was also taken back by the Adams family from the orphanage during high school, and was even engaged to Brian during university. However, the previous Caroline always flatly refused the Adams family, wanting to continue living with me. This was the first time she told me she wanted to leave me and return to her original family. I gave her a bitter smile and could only nod in the end. "As long as you're happy." True to her word, she contacted the Adams family to pick her up on the day of her discharge to celebrate her homecoming. The Adams even threw a banquet. She severed ties with me and became the heiress of the Adams family. In a way, the plot developing in the right direction. This way, she is more likely to marry the male lead, Brian. Yet somehow, after she left, my heart felt inexplicably empty. Caroline seemed utterly heartbroken by me. After transferring a large sum of money to my account, she blocked all my contact information at school. She passes me by like a stranger, never even glancing in my direction. Elizabeth was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and the Elizabeth family also fell into decline. Originally, the Adam, Brian, and Elizabeth families were in a tripartite balance of power, but the fall of the Elizabeth family disrupted this equilibrium. To expedite the division of power, the Adam and Brian families arranged an engagement with Caroline and Brian as the central figures in this political marriage. Caroline is truly an ungrateful wretch. Her brother used to treat her so well, but now that she is back with the Adam family, she won't even acknowledge him. Yes, I used to think she was kind, but now I see she is truly ungrateful. I heard she cut ties with James as soon as she went back. Who knew she was that kind of person? Occasionally classmates would gossip about us, and Caroline was always the one being blamed. It's not what you think. I was the one who hurt Caroline first. I walked over to explain to them that even though we have no relationship now, I still can't bear to hear anyone speak ill of her. The Adam family is vast in wealth and influence with intricate power dynamics. Knowing the original story S-plot, I understand Caroline ISNT doing well. Either moreover, her happiness level keeps dropping. It fell from 60 to 40 in less than a month. Returning home to this empty house, my mind remains filled with images of Caroline. No one pesters me to cook delicious food anymore. No one noisily walks by my side anymore. But once she marries Brian, I can go home. Wasn't that my original goal? Then why does my heart feel so hollow, as if a piece is missing? I stared blankly at our previous chat records, but the dialogue box had long been blocked by her leaving me with only a few red exclamation marks. Under the arrangements of Adam's family, Caroline went abroad. Brian, who loved Caroline deeply and naturally, followed her there. It used to be Brian asking me to help him make an impression in front of Caroline, but now it's me asking him to report on Caroline's recent situation. Every time I heard him say Caroline couldn't get used to the food abroad and had lost weight again, my heart ached terribly. So I taught Brian a few home-style recipes, letting him occasionally cook for Caroline, following the instructions I provided. She actually likes my cooking quite a bit, said it tastes like home, Brian reported excitedly after his initial success. I forced a bitter smile. As long as she likes it, make sure she eats well. Though she still doesn't like me much, she agreed to let me come cook for her once a week, Brian continued. I gave Brian the recipes for several dishes Caroline usually loved. I couldn't just treat Caroline as a mere supporting character. We relied on each other for survival for 10 years. Every day she was gone, I worried sick about her, terrified she might fall ill or go hungry out there. I sent countless messages to her chat every single day, yet she never once replied to me. Once when Brian mentioned my name in front of her, Caroline flew into a rage and forbade him from ever bringing me up again. I don't understand why she'd treat me this way, just because I didn't respond to her confession, but without her by my side, I'd become like a walking corpse every day, tasteless and devoid of meaning. I must have liked her too. I thought it's just a shame we weren't from the same world. I was merely a tool, an NPC, with no role written for me in this story. 6 after graduating from university, Caroline and Brian returned to their home country. Though Caroline never developed feelings for Brian, under her influence, Brian threw himself enthusiastically into charity work and found his own contentment. In this world, I had neither family nor friends. After Caroline left me, I lost my center of gravity in life. But time seems to erase everything. Over the years, I grew accustomed to being alone again. Only occasionally, when passing by intersections we once walked together, would I feel a pang of sorrow. Caroline truly lives up to being the strongest antagonist in this book, a hopeless romantic turned ruthless careerist. Within less than a year of returning home, she had the Addams family completely under her thumb. Caroline became the power behind the Addams group, yet she never called off the engagement, even though by then no one in the Addams family could dictate her fate anymore. I suppose she must have feelings for Brian, or at least grown accustomed to having him by her side. After all, the pull of the original plot is hard to resist. But Brian told me theirs was merely a marriage of convenience. Caroline still refuses to accept him. These past few years, though, he has adopted a more zen attitude, finding philanthropy far more meaningful than chasing romance. They're now simply charity partners, doing charitable work together every month. He no longer continues to have feelings for Caroline, as they are better suited as friends. Caroline said she has someone she likes. After all these years, I've grown accustomed to. In fact, I now feel that compared to liking her, I prefer doing charity work. Once I marry Caroline, I'll hand over the Addams family to her, and then I'll devote myself entirely to charity. After all, rather than liking kind people, it's better to become a kind person myself. Brian looked completely at ease, and I found his words surprisingly reasonable. If you admire certain qualities in someone, you should strive to embody those qualities yourself, rather than placing your hopes on others. 7. The Addams and Brian families are now the two most powerful families, with several months still remaining before the wedding. The media had already begun saturating the news with related coverage. I just never expected that someone I used to see every day, someone I raised with my own hands, would now have her news delivered to me through the media. And her happiness level gradually dropped to 30 beyond that. I had no specific information about her. The day before the wedding, I was kidnapped. I thought it was a robbery, but when I opened my eyes, Caroline was standing right in front of me. Compared to the naive innocence of years past, she now appeared more mature and beautiful, with glamorous curls and impeccably refined makeup. Brother, long time no see, she squinted at me with a somewhat condescending look. Yet at this moment, her happiness level, which had previously dropped to 30, suddenly skyrocketed all the way to 80. What is going on? Could it be because there are less than 24 hours left until the wedding begins? Happy wedding. I never expected she would have me kidnapped just to meet me like this, especially since she had blocked all my attempts to contact her before. I'm not getting married. She shook her head and lowered her eyes. I'm going to disappoint you. Maybe you one T be able to return to your original world. I looked at her in confusion. Had she also awakened? Elizabeth told me about this world as plot. I knew since university that your kindness to me was just part of your mission all these years. It's all been fake. You can only go home after completing your task. She smiled self-deprecatingly. You've always wanted to set me up with Brian. You thought I had to marry him for you to complete your mission. I used to think so too. So I cut ties with you and got engaged to Brian. I wanted to sacrifice myself to send you home. Hearing her words, my heart trembled, my fingertips, even digging into my palms. Caroline had sacrificed so much for me. Brother, I blocked you because I couldn't control my longing for you. I wanted you so badly, yet I also wanted you to return home. I was afraid you'd lose your family like I did, afraid you'd suffer the same pain as me. I couldn't help but reach out and pat her back, just like comforting her in childhood. No matter what happened, she was still that little girl who needed me. She bit her lip, looking at me with conflict, but yesterday, I awakened. I learned your mission specifically concerns my happiness value. Haven T. You noticed, even after gaining the Adams family and getting engaged to Brian, my happiness still keeps falling instead of rising. I nodded. That was indeed the case. Her happiness level had been consistently low these past few years, but she refused to see me. I had assumed it was because she had suffered grievances at the Adams household. Caroline, I softly called her name. Because only you can give me happiness. I don't want you to just be my brother anymore, James. My happiness level only rises when I'm with you, so regardless of whether you like me or not, I don't want to suppress my feelings anymore. She reached up to my shoulders and pressed her lips against mine. I began to confront Caroline's feelings for me, and I realized that I actually liked her too. It's just that I'd been confined by the plot before, never considering getting involved in this world. But since she has already been so brave, why should I keep retreating? With her in this world, why should I still be fixated on going back? So I decided to abandon the mission. However, she didn't believe in my feelings. Even when I expressed my love for her, she still thought I was deceiving her, just trying to increase her happiness value, so I could return to my original world. On her birthday, I cooked her longevity noodles and prepared a candlelit dinner. She drank until slightly tipsy, gazing at me with hazy consciousness. Don't even think about fooling me, James. I'll never let you go if you dare like someone else. I'll lock you up. I won't allow you to return to your own world either. I ruffled her hair. Silly girl. I'm not going back. Wherever you are is my world. I don't know if it's because Caroline was abandoned in her childhood, but she is utterly lacking in sense of security. Her happiness level rose to 99 and then remained stagnant. I think she still doesn't believe I'll stay in this world with her, deliberately withholding that last bit of happiness to prevent me from completing my mission. Yet all I wanted was to pour my heart into being good to her, making up for all those lost years. We held a grand wedding while Brian handed the company over to us and ran off to teach in the mountains by himself, thoroughly enjoying his new life. There were even rumors that Brian had lost all hope after the broken engagement, but for us involved parties, we just treated such gossip as entertainment. That day, Caroline and I were shopping at the mall, when suddenly Elizabeth, who had just been released from prison, appeared before us with a knife. She lunged at Caroline, spewing vicious curses. It's all because of you, the wicked supporting character. I lost everything because of you. Go to hell. The cold glint of the knife came straight at us in the blink of an eye. I threw myself in front of Caroline, only to feel a sudden chill in my abdomen as blood gushed out like it was free. James, Caroline's voice trembled with panic as she held me, her hands shaking while she tried to press on the wound. Elizabeth was restrained by security, yet she continued to hurl insults. I felt the blood draining from me, my consciousness fading along with it. You're not allowed to die. James the First was wrong. I shouldn't have left you in this world. As she was pushed into the ambulance, Caroline's happiness value suddenly turned to 100. The option to return to my original world appeared before my eyes, especially since Caroline had only been back at the Adams house for a few days before being discovered by the then Mrs. Adams and immediately sent to an orphanage. Caroline's voice trembled with tears, speaking haltingly as if pleading. I knew she was afraid I would die, completely forcing herself to push the happiness value to 100, wanting me to return while I still had breath left. But if I choose to go back, will I never see her again? I don't know if my body in this world can survive, but if I really return to the original world, I'll lose her completely. Let us take the gamble. I'm giving up the option to go back. Either die or stay alive and continue being with her. I can't bear a world without Caroline. I'd rather die. With that thought, I gradually lost consciousness. When I woke up, I saw Caroline sitting by the bed with swollen red eyes. James, are you an idiot? As she spoke, her tears began to fall again. I raised my hand to wipe the tears from her cheek. Why are you crying? If that knife had gone 2 centimeters deeper, you wouldn't have made it. She took my hand. Why didn't you go back? You could have it that time. I cut her off. A world without you is no different from death. Her eyes were red and swollen as she looked at me like a wronged little rabbit. Do you believe now that I truly love you? I'm not going back. I intertwined my fingers with hers. She nodded, then planted a gentle kiss on my cheek. James, the first love you. I feel the same. You're my whole world. Even if I were to give up everything, I would never give up on you.